Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and tell us what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Now, let's begin. The autumn rain drummed against the tall windows of Hartley Media Group's headquarters, each droplet racing down the glass like tiny rivers of silver. Maya Williams stood in the elevator, watching the floor numbers climb with a sense of dread coiling in her stomach. 27th floor, 28th, 29th. Her new life was about to begin, and she should have felt excited. After all, landing a senior editor position at one of New York's most prestigious publishing houses was the break she'd been chasing for 5 years. But excitement wasn't what made her hands tremble as she clutched her leather portfolio. It was something else entirely, something she'd buried deep and hoped would stay forgotten. The elevator chimed, doors sliding open to reveal a reception area that screamed understated wealth. Cream marble floors, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with first editions, and a chandelier that probably cost more than her annual salary. A young receptionist with perfect posture and an even more perfect smile greeted her. "You must be Maya Williams. Welcome to Hartley Media. Mr. Hartley is expecting you in the executive suite." Maya's heart stuttered. Mr. Hartley? Of course she'd known the CEO's name when she applied. Ethan Hartley. But Hartley was a common enough name, and New York was a massive city. The odds of it being him, the same man from that night 5 years ago, had seemed impossibly small. She'd convinced herself it was just paranoia, just her guilt manifesting as irrational fear. But now, walking down the hushed corridor toward the corner office, that old familiar panic crept up her spine. She remembered every detail of that night, as if it had been yesterday. The hotel bar in Boston, where she'd been attending a journalism conference. The handsome stranger who'd sat down beside her, ordered a whiskey neat, and asked if she believed in fate. His laugh, warm and genuine, that had made her forget she was supposed to be networking. The way he'd listened when she talked about her dreams of becoming a writer, really listened, like her words mattered. And then, the hotel room. His touch, gentle yet intense, the way he'd whispered her name like a prayer. The morning light filtering through the curtains as she'd watched him sleep, his dark hair falling across his forehead, his face peaceful and beautiful. And then, her cowardice. She'd left while he was still sleeping, slipping out like a thief, leaving nothing behind but the faint scent of her perfume and a crushing sense of shame that still hadn't faded. The executive assistant, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, gestured toward the massive oak door. "He's ready for you. Go right in." Maya took a breath, smoothed down her navy blazer, and pushed open the door. The office was enormous, with walls of windows offering a panoramic view of Manhattan. Rain continued to streak the glass, turning the city into an impressionist painting. And there, standing with his back to her, hands in the pockets of his perfectly tailored charcoal suit, was a man she'd never forgotten. He turned slowly, and time seemed to collapse. 5 years vanished in an instant. Ethan Hartley. His face had matured, the boyish softness replaced by sharper angles and a more commanding presence. But those eyes, deep brown and impossibly perceptive, were exactly as she remembered. They locked onto hers, and she saw the flash of recognition, followed by something darker. Surprise. Anger. And beneath it all, something that made her knees weak. He remembered. Of course he remembered. "Miss Williams." His voice was smooth, controlled, giving nothing away except for the slight tightness in his jaw. "Welcome to Hartley Media. Please, have a seat." Maya forced her legs to move, crossing the vast expanse of expensive carpet to the chair positioned in front of his desk. She sat back straight, trying to project a confidence she absolutely did not feel. "Thank you, Mr. Hartley. I'm honored to be here." He remained standing, studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed, like he could see through her professional facade to the terrified woman beneath. "It's been a long time," he said quietly, each word weighted with meaning. 5 years, if my memory serves." Her mouth went dry. She started, then stopped, unsure what to say. An apology seemed pathetically inadequate, an explanation even more so. Ethan moved around his desk, leaning against it casually, though there was nothing casual about the way he watched her. "You left without a word. No note. No number. Nothing." The words hung in the air between them, an accusation and a question all at once. Maya swallowed hard, her carefully prepared first-day speech evaporating from her mind. "I'm sorry," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's all you have to say?" He tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "After 5 years, just sorry? What do you want me to say?" The words came out sharper than she intended, defensive. "It was one night. We were strangers. I thought it was easier to just—" She trailed off, unable to finish. "Leave?" he supplied, his tone cutting. "Disappear? Pretend it never happened?" "Yes," she admitted, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Exactly that." Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. Then he straightened, his demeanor shifting into pure professionalism, though his eyes remained sharp. "Well, Miss Williams, since you're now my senior editor, we'll need to establish some ground rules. This office requires dedication, excellence, and above all, honesty. Can you provide those things?" The emphasis on that last word wasn't lost on her. It felt like a test, a challenge. Maya lifted her chin, refusing to cower, despite the guilt churning in her stomach. "I can, and I will." Ethan studied her for another long moment, then nodded curtly. "Good. You'll be working closely with me on our new literary fiction imprint. That means daily meetings, collaboration on acquisitions, and significant one-on-one time. If that's going to be a problem, speak now." Her heart hammered against her ribs. Working closely with him? Daily meetings? This was either the universe's idea of poetic justice or a cosmic joke. But she needed this job. She'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to walk away now. "Not a problem," she lied smoothly. "Excellent." He moved back behind his desk, putting that barrier between them again. "We'll start with the editorial meeting at 10. My assistant will show you to your office." Dismissed. Maya stood, her legs unsteady, and turned toward the door. "Miss Williams." She stopped, glancing back. He was watching her again, that same unreadable expression on his face. "Don't make the mistake of thinking I've forgotten anything about that night. Every detail is burned into my memory. The way you laughed, the way you said my name, the way you felt in my arms, and most of all, the way you looked at me before you ran." Heat flooded her cheeks, a mixture of shame and something far more dangerous. Something that felt suspiciously like longing. She started. "Just so we're clear," he continued, his voice dropping lower, more intimate despite the professional distance between them. "This time, you don't get to run. You're here now, in my world, and we're going to deal with what happened, one way or another." Before she could respond, he turned his attention to his computer, effectively ending the conversation. Maya fled, her composure barely holding until she reached the hallway. She leaned against the wall, pressing a hand to her racing heart. What had she done? She'd walked straight into the lion's den, and the lion remembered exactly how she'd wronged him. This wasn't just a new job. This was a reckoning. Maya's office turned out to be smaller than Ethan's, but still impressive, with a view of the East River and shelves waiting to be filled with books. She stood at the window, watching the rain, trying to calm the storm inside her chest. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Lily. First day. How's it going? Is the CEO as intimidating as the rumors say? Maya stared at the message, then typed back. You have no idea. She couldn't tell Lily the truth. Not yet. Maybe not ever. How did you explain to your best friend that you'd once had the most intense, passionate night of your life with a man whose name you didn't know, only to discover 5 years later that he was now your boss and remembered every single moment? The morning passed in a blur of introductions and onboarding. The editorial team was talented and welcoming. The offices buzzed with creative energy, and under any other circumstances, Maya would have been thrilled. But every moment felt overshadowed by the knowledge that Ethan was just down the hall, remembering. At precisely 10 o'clock, she entered the conference room for the editorial meeting. The space was already filled with department heads and senior editors, all clutching coffee and notepads. And there, at the head of the table, sat Ethan. He looked up as she entered, his expression neutral, but she caught the way his jaw tightened slightly. The only empty seat was directly across from him. Of course it was. She slid into the chair, hyper-aware of his presence, of the way the other editors seemed to defer to him with a mixture of respect and slight fear. Good morning, everyone. Ethan's voice commanded immediate attention. Let's begin with acquisitions. The meeting proceeded with remarkable efficiency. Ethan was clearly brilliant at what he did. His insights sharp, his questions probing, but fair. He pushed his team to think bigger, to take risks, to find the stories that mattered. Maya found herself grudgingly impressed despite her anxiety. When it came time to discuss the new literary fiction imprint, Ethan's gaze locked onto hers. Miss Williams, you'll be spearheading this initiative. I want bold voices, diverse perspectives, stories that challenge readers. Think you can handle that? Every eye in the room turned to her. Maya straightened, channeling every ounce of professionalism she possessed. Absolutely. I have several authors already in mind whose work would be perfect. Name them. She did, rattling off a list of emerging writers she'd been following for years, explaining what made each one special, why their voices mattered. As she spoke, she watched Ethan's expression shift from challenge to something else. Interest. Maybe even approval. When she finished, a brief silence filled the room. Then Ethan nodded. Impressive. Set up meetings with your top 3 choices. I want proposals on my desk by Friday. The meeting continued, but Maya felt a tiny spark of confidence ignite. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she could separate the professional from the personal and prove she deserved to be here based on her skills, not despite her past mistakes. After the meeting adjourned, she gathered her notes quickly, hoping to escape before Ethan could corner her. No such luck. Miss Williams, a moment. She turned slowly. The conference room had emptied, leaving them alone. Ethan stood by the window, his profile sharp against the gray sky. Yes, Mr. Hartley? He turned to face her, and the professional mask slipped just enough for her to see the man beneath, the one who'd held her 5 years ago and made her feel things she'd been afraid to name. You did well in there, he said quietly. Thank you. She hesitated, then added, I meant what I said. I can handle this job. I'm good at what I do. I know. That's why I hired you. Wait, what? Maya's eyes widened. You knew? When I applied, you knew who I was? A slight smile tugged at his mouth, though it didn't reach his eyes. Your resume came across my desk 3 weeks ago. The moment I saw your name, I remembered everything. The conference in Boston, the hotel. You. So you hired me to, what? Get revenge? Make my life miserable? The smile vanished. I hired you because your work is exceptional, and you're exactly what this imprint needs. But yes, I also hired you because I have questions that deserve answers, and you owe me at least that much. Maya's hands clenched around her notepad. What do you want to know? Why? His voice was soft, but edged with something raw. Why did you leave like that? We had something real that night, Maya. Don't pretend we didn't. I felt it. And I know you did too. So why did you run? The words hit her like a physical blow, forcing her to confront what she'd spent 5 years avoiding. Because I was scared, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Because it felt too big, too intense, too fast. Because I'd never felt that way before. And it terrified me. Because the thought of staying and risking that you wouldn't feel the same in the morning light was unbearable. So I took the coward's way out. Ethan stared at her, emotions warring across his face. And now? Now I'm standing here wishing I could go back and make a different choice, she whispered. But I can't. All I can do is apologize and hope that somehow we can find a way to work together without this destroying us both. He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same scent from that night, close enough to see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. Here's what's going to happen, Maya. We're going to work together. You're going to prove to me that you're as talented as your resume claims. And in the process, we're going to figure out if what we had 5 years ago was just a moment or something more. Her breath caught. Ethan, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't particularly care what you think is a good idea. His voice was firm but not unkind. You ran once. You don't get to run again. We're going to face this, whatever it is, like adults. Understood? She should argue. She should set boundaries. She should do 1,000 things other than nod slowly and whisper, "Understood." Good. He stepped back, the professional mask sliding back into place. Now get to work. Those author meetings won't set themselves up. Maya fled for the second time that day, her heart racing and her mind spinning. What had she gotten herself into? Working with Ethan was going to be torture. Every interaction a reminder of what she'd thrown away. But beneath the anxiety, something else stirred. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Because the truth was, she'd never forgotten him either. That night in Boston had haunted her dreams for 5 years, a ghost of what might have been. And now, impossibly, she had a second chance. The question was whether she was brave enough to take it, or if she'd run again when things got too real. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of work that left Maya exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. True to his word, Ethan kept her busy with the literary fiction imprint. Proposals piled on her desk, manuscripts demanded attention, and author meetings filled her calendar. And through it all, Ethan was there. Not hovering, but present. He'd stop by her office with questions about a submission, or she'd find herself called to his office to discuss strategy. Each interaction was professional, courteous even, but underneath ran a current of unspoken tension that made every conversation feel charged. On Thursday afternoon, Maya was deep in a manuscript when her phone rang. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. "Yes, Mr. Hartley." "My office." 5 minutes. "We need to discuss the Peterson manuscript." He hung up before she could respond. Maya marked her place in the manuscript she'd been reading, grabbed her notes on the Peterson project, and headed down the hall. Ethan's assistant waved her through with a knowing smile that made Maya wonder just how much office gossip was already circulating about the new senior editor and the CEO. She found Ethan standing at his window again, jacket off, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. It was unfairly attractive, that casual version of him. It reminded her too much of Boston, of the way he'd looked in the dim light of the hotel room, relaxed and open in a way he never was in the office. "You wanted to discuss Peterson?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. He turned, and something in his expression made her pause. This wasn't his usual professional demeanor. This was something else, something more personal. "Actually, I lied. Her heart skipped. What? There's nothing wrong with the Peterson manuscript. It's brilliant, and you know it. So why am I here? Because we need to talk, really talk, and you've been avoiding me outside of work discussions for 4 days straight. Maya crossed her arms defensively. We work together, Ethan. That's all this needs to be. Is it? He moved closer, not threateningly, but with purpose. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about what you said, about being scared, about running because it felt too big. I need you to understand something, Maya. That night wasn't just a hookup for me. It meant something. Her breath caught. Ethan, I don't think we should. We should absolutely be having this conversation. He was close enough now that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Do you know what it was like? Waking up and finding you gone? No note, no explanation, nothing. Just your absence and the smell of your perfume on the pillow. Guilt twisted in her chest. I'm sorry. I've said I'm sorry. I know. And I believe you. But sorry doesn't change the fact that you left, or that for 5 years I've wondered what I did wrong. What did I do, Maya, to make you run? Nothing, she whispered, her eyes burning. You were perfect. That was the problem. You were perfect. And that night was perfect. And I was just a struggling journalist with student loans and dreams bigger than my bank account. You were this successful, confident man, and I was terrified that in the morning light, you'd see me clearly and realize I wasn't worth it. Ethan's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. You really believed that? That I wouldn't want you? I didn't know, she admitted, and I was too scared to find out. So I ran, and I've regretted it every day since. The air between them thickened, charged with 5 years of unresolved longing. Ethan's thumb continued its gentle path across her cheek, and Maya found herself leaning into his touch, despite every logical thought screaming that this was a terrible idea. If I kiss you right now, he murmured, his voice rough, will you run again? She should say yes. She should pull away and reestablish professional boundaries. She should do 1,000 things other than what she did, which was whisper. No, his mouth was on hers before the word fully left her lips. The kiss was nothing like that first one 5 years ago, which had been tentative, exploratory, the beginning of something unknown. This kiss was desperate, hungry, filled with years of questions and regrets and need. Maya's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he responded by wrapping an arm around her waist, lifting her slightly off the ground. They broke apart, gasping, foreheads pressed together. That was a mistake, Maya breathed, even as her fingers refused to release his shirt. Probably, Ethan agreed. His hand tangled in her hair. Do you care? She should. She absolutely should. But with his heart pounding against her palm and his breath warm on her lips, she couldn't bring herself to lie. Number. Good. He kissed her again, softer this time, thorough and deliberate. Then he set her down gently, stepping back with visible effort. But we're doing this right. What does that mean? It means no more running, no more hiding. We're going to figure this out, whatever this is. But we're doing it honestly, which means no secrets, no games, and definitely no disappearing acts. Maya nodded, still dizzy from the kiss. Okay. And it means, he continued, his professional mask sliding back into place with impressive speed, that we keep this separate from work. In this office, you're my senior editor, and I'm your boss. Outside of this building, we can be whatever we're going to be. But we don't let one affect the other. Agreed? It was sensible, mature, exactly the kind of boundary they needed. So why did it feel like he was putting distance between them again? Agreed, she managed. Ethan nodded, already moving back behind his desk, back into CEO mode. Good. Now, about the Peterson manuscript. I think we should fast-track it for our spring list. What do you think? Just like that, they were back to business. But Maya could still taste him on her lips, could still feel the imprint of his hands on her waist. Work suddenly seemed impossible, but she forced herself to focus, to discuss marketing strategies and publication timelines, as if her entire world hadn't just shifted on its axis. That evening, as Maya packed up to leave, she found a note on her desk in handwriting she didn't recognize, but somehow knew was Ethan's. Dinner tomorrow night. 8 o'clock. I'll pick you up. Don't even think about running. She smiled despite herself, despite the voice in her head warning her that this was dangerous, that mixing business with pleasure never ended well, that she was setting herself up for heartbreak. But for once, she was going to be brave. She was going to stay. Maya changed outfits 4 times before settling on an emerald green dress that was elegant, but not trying too hard. She told herself it didn't matter what she wore, that this was just dinner, just 2 adults talking. But a reflection told a different story. Her eyes were bright, her cheeks flushed, and she looked happier than she had in years. The buzzer rang at precisely 8 o'clock. Of course, Ethan was punctual. She grabbed her coat and purse, took one last steadying breath, and headed downstairs. He was waiting beside a sleek black car, dressed in dark jeans and a leather jacket that made him look less like a CEO and more like the man from that night in Boston. The sight of him, casual and devastating, made her heart stutter. "You look beautiful," he said simply, opening the car door for her. "Thank you. You look different. Out of the suit. Better or worse?" She slid into the passenger seat, letting a small smile curve her lips. Different. The restaurant he chose was intimate and tucked away, the kind of place that valued privacy over pretension. They were seated in a corner booth, candles flickering between them, casting dancing shadows across Ethan's face. "So," he said, once they'd ordered, 5 years is a long time. Tell me what I've missed." Maya laughed softly. "That's a broad question. Start with work. What happened after Boston?" She took a sip of wine, gathering her thoughts. "After the conference, I went back to Chicago. I was freelancing mostly, trying to break into bigger publications. It was hard, a lot of rejection, a lot of ramen noodles for dinner. But I kept at it. Eventually, I got a position at a small press, worked my way up to editor, and then I saw the posting for Hartley Media. And you applied, knowing I might be here?" She met his eyes. "Honestly, I didn't think it would be you. Hartley is a common name, and New York is huge. I convinced myself it was just paranoia. But part of me, a small part, hoped it was." "Hope is dangerous," he said quietly. "It makes you believe in impossible things. Like second chances." "Like second chances?" They fell silent as their meals arrived, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Instead, it felt easy, natural, like slipping back into a conversation that had been paused rather than ended. As they ate, Ethan told her about building Hartley Media from a small independent publisher into one of the industry's major players. His father had founded the company, but Ethan had transformed it, taking risks on debut authors and experimental fiction that other houses wouldn't touch. She could hear the passion in his voice, see it in the way his eyes lit up when he talked about discovering a brilliant new voice. "You really love it," she observed. "The work, finding stories that matter." "I do." He set down his fork, leaning back. "Books changed my life when I was a kid. My parents divorced when I was 8, messy and ugly, and I escaped into stories. I wanted to create that escape for others, to publish the books that would save someone else the way they saved me." Maya's chest tightened. She'd never known that about him. That night in Boston, they'd talked about dreams and ambitions, but not about the wounds that shaped them. "What about you?" he asked. Why books? Why editing? Because words matter, she said simply. Because a good story can change how you see the world, can make you feel less alone. I wanted to help bring those stories to life. We're not that different, you and I, Ethan said thoughtfully. Both chasing the same thing, just from different angles. Maybe that's why that night felt so. She trailed off, unsure how to finish. Inevitable? He supplied. Like we were always supposed to find each other? Yes. The word came out as barely more than a breath. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront despite the cold. The city glittered around them, alive and indifferent to their small drama. Ethan's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing naturally. I need to know something, he said, stopping to face her. If I hadn't hired you, if you hadn't walked into my office, would you have ever tried to find me? Maya considered lying, softening the truth. But they'd promised honesty. No, she admitted. I convinced myself you'd forgotten, that it was just a night that meant more to me than it did to you. So I tried to move on. Did you? Move on? She looked up at him, this man who'd haunted her thoughts for 5 years. Number. Not really. There were other dates, other relationships, but none of them ever felt right. I compared everyone to you, to that night, and they all fell short. Ethan's hand came up to cup her face, the gesture now familiar. I need you to understand something. That night changed me. After you left, I looked for you. I called the conference organizers, tried to find a registration with your name, but there were hundreds of attendees. I even hired a private investigator, but you were a ghost. Eventually, I had to accept that you didn't want to be found. Tears pricked Maya's eyes. I'm so sorry. I know, and I forgive you. But Maya, I can't go through that again. If we do this, if we try to make this something real, I need to know you're all in. No running when things get hard. No disappearing when you get scared. Can you promise me that? She thought about all the times in her life she'd chosen safety over risk, comfort over challenge. She thought about the 5 years she'd spent regretting a single moment of cowardice. And she made a choice. I promise. I'm not running anymore. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Around them, the city rushed past, but they were still, caught in their own moment. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me. It wasn't a demand, but a question, an invitation. Maya knew what he was really asking. This wasn't just about one night. This was about choosing to trust, to risk, to be brave. Okay, she whispered. They drove through the city in comfortable silence, hands linked over the center console. Ethan's apartment was in a high-rise overlooking Central Park, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows. But Maya barely noticed the view. She only had eyes for him. The morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains, painting everything in shades of gold. Maya woke slowly, awareness returning in pieces. The soft sheets, the warm body beside her, the steady rhythm of breathing that wasn't her own. She turned her head, finding Ethan already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with an expression that made her heart ache. Hi, she whispered, suddenly shy despite everything that had happened the night before. Hi yourself. His voice was rough with sleep, his hair endearingly mussed. How long have you been watching me? Long enough to make sure you're really here? That you're not going to vanish the moment I close my eyes? Guilt twisted through her. Ethan, I'm not leaving. I promised. I know. He traced a finger down her arm, the touch feather light. But promises are fragile things. Actions matter more. Then let me show you. She rolled toward him, capturing his mouth in a kiss that she hoped conveyed everything she couldn't quite put into words. The apology, the regret, the hope, and most of all, the determination to get it right this time. They stayed in bed longer than they should have, talking about everything, nothing. Ethan told her about growing up in Connecticut, about the pressure of legacy and expectation. Maya shared stories of her childhood in California, of immigrant parents who'd sacrificed everything to give her opportunities they'd never had. It was the conversation they should have had 5 years ago, the getting to know you that had been skipped in favor of chemistry and desire. Now, they were building something real, something with a foundation. Eventually, reality intruded. They both had work, responsibilities, but as Maya showered and dressed in yesterday's clothes, she felt lighter than she had in years. When she emerged from the bathroom, she found Ethan in the Kit Williams, 2 cups of coffee waiting. "I could get used to this," she said, accepting one gratefully. "Good, because I plan on making it a regular occurrence." He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "But we should probably talk about work." "Right. Work." Maya took a steadying breath. "We agreed to keep it separate. In the office, you're my boss. I'm your employee. Out here, we're—" She paused, unsure what label to use. "Together?" Ethan supplied. "Seeing each other? Figuring out if what we have is real? All of the above?" "All of the above," she agreed, smiling. They arrived at the office separately, maintaining the professional distance they'd agreed upon. But Maya couldn't help the small thrill that ran through her every time their eyes met across a conference room, or when he stopped by her office with a question that could have been sent via email. The secret added a layer of excitement to her days, but it also brought complications. The other editors started to notice the attention Ethan paid to Maya's projects. Whispers started, speculation about favoritism, and why the new senior editor seemed to have such easy access to the CEO. Sarah, the fiction director, cornered Maya in the break room one afternoon. "So," she said casually, pouring herself coffee, "you and Ethan seem to have really hit it off." "He's a great boss," Maya replied carefully. "Very hands-on with the new imprint. That's one way to put it." Sarah's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just be careful, Maya. Office romances are tricky, especially when there's a power dynamic." "We're not," Maya started, but Sarah held up a hand. "Please. I've been here for 7 years. I know what chemistry looks like. And whatever is happening between you two, it's palpable. Just don't let it compromise your judgment, or his." After Sarah left, Maya slumped against the counter, anxiety gnawing at her. They'd been so careful, but apparently not careful enough. If Sarah had noticed, how many others had too? That evening, she brought it up to Ethan as they sat in his apartment, takeout containers spread across the coffee table. "People are starting to talk," she said without preamble. "About us." Ethan set down his chopsticks, his expression unreadable. "Who?" "Sarah, for one. And if she's noticed, others probably have too. Maybe we need to be more careful. Or maybe we should just—" "What?" His voice sharpened. "Hide? Pretend we don't care about each other?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean, Maya? Because it sounds like you're looking for an excuse to run again. That's not fair, isn't it?" He stood, pacing to the window. "The first sign of difficulty, of complication, and you're already thinking about backing away." Maya rose too, anger flaring. "I'm thinking about protecting both of us. If this blows up, it's not just our relationship at stake. It's our careers, our reputations. So what do you suggest? We break up? Pretend the last week never happened?" "No," she said firmly. "I suggest we be honest. Tell HR, make it official, follow proper protocols. That way, no one can accuse us of impropriety." Ethan turned, studying her. "You'd be willing to do that, to make this public?" "Yes." The word came out stronger than she felt. "Because I'm not running, Ethan. I'm trying to be smart about this, to protect what we're building. I'm not hiding from it. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. Okay. We'll talk to HR tomorrow, make it official. But Maya, I need you to communicate with me when you're scared or worried. Don't just make decisions and then inform me. We're in this together. You're right. I'm sorry. She crossed to him, taking his hands. I'm still learning how to do this, how to be in a relationship instead of running from one. Be patient with me, always. He pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. But you have to promise me something in return. Anything. Trust me. Trust that I'm not going to wake up and decide you're not worth it. Trust that what we have is strong enough to weather complications. Can you do that? Maya thought about the 5 years she'd spent running from this exact fear, and she made another choice to be brave. I can. I will. The meeting with HR was surprisingly straightforward. The department head, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia, listened to their situation without judgment. She explained the disclosure requirements, the need to ensure Maya's reporting structure didn't create conflicts of interest, and the importance of maintaining professionalism. By the end of the week, Maya was reporting to the editorial director instead of directly to Ethan, and their relationship was officially on record. The gossip, as expected, exploded. Some people were supportive, finding the story romantic. Others were skeptical, questioning Maya's qualifications and whether she'd earned her position or slept her way into it. The comments stung, but Maya held her head high, letting her work speak for itself. The literary fiction imprint was thriving. Her first 3 acquisitions were generating buzz, and the authors she'd championed were delivering manuscripts that exceeded expectations. Even the skeptics had to admit she was good at her job. But the real test came 6 weeks into their relationship, when Ethan had to reject a manuscript Maya had championed. They sat in his office, the manuscript in question between them like a barrier. I understand your vision for this book, Ethan said carefully, and the writing is beautiful. But the market analysis suggests it won't sell, and we can't afford to take that risk right now. Maya's jaw tightened. Sometimes the best books are the ones that don't fit neatly into market categories. This author has something important to say. I agree. But important doesn't always translate to profitable, and we're running a business. Her hands clenched in her lap. So that's it? Your decision is final? It is. And I need you to accept that without this becoming personal. How can it not be personal? She heard the edge in her voice and tried to soften it. Ethan, I believe in this book. Maya, look at me. She did, meeting his steady gaze. I respect your passion. It's one of the things I love about you. But in this office, I'm the CEO, and sometimes I have to make decisions you won't like. That doesn't mean I don't value your opinion or trust your judgment. It means I have to weigh multiple factors that you might not see. She took a breath, fighting the instinct to argue further. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm just disappointed. I know. And for what it's worth, if the numbers were different, I'd green-light this in a heartbeat. Maybe we can revisit it next quarter, when we have a better sense of how the imprint is performing. That would be great. Thank you. After she left his office, Maya felt the weight of what they were attempting. Keeping professional and personal separate wasn't just about physical boundaries. It was about learning to disagree without damaging trust, about accepting that they wouldn't always see eye to eye, and about respecting each other's roles even when emotions ran high. That evening, Ethan showed up at her apartment with Thai food and an apology. I wasn't trying to dismiss your opinion today, he said, as they settled on her couch. You weren't. I know that now. I let my disappointment make it personal when it wasn't. It's a learning curve for both of us. He set down his food, turning to face her. But we're doing okay, right? We're figuring it out? We are, Maya agreed, leaning into him. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. Definitely worth it. The weeks turned into months, and they settled into a rhythm that worked. In the office, they were professional, careful to maintain appropriate boundaries. Outside of work, they were building something real. Ethan met her parents via video call, charming her mother with his respectful manners and impressing her father with his knowledge of her mother's hometown in Taiwan. Maya spent Thanksgiving with Ethan's family in Connecticut, navigating the complex dynamics of the Hartley clan with more grace than she'd expected. His mother was warm but scrutinizing, clearly protective of her son. His father was more reserved, eyeing Maya with the same assessing gaze Ethan sometimes wore. But by the end of the weekend, she'd won them over, bonding with his sister over shared book recommendations and convincing his father that her intentions toward Ethan were genuine. It was Emily, Ethan's younger sister, who pulled Maya aside before they left. "He's different with you," she said, her voice warm. "Lighter. He's always been so serious, so focused on the business and living up to expectations. But with you, he laughs more. He's himself. Thank you for that." The words made Maya's eyes burn with unexpected emotion. "I love him," she found herself saying. It had been true for a while, but this was the first time she'd said it aloud to anyone. "Then you should tell him." Emily squeezed her hand. Life's too short for unspoken words. On the drive back to the city, Maya kept glancing at Ethan, working up the courage. Finally, as they crossed into Manhattan, she took the leap. "I love you." The words fell into the quiet car like stones into still water, creating ripples. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel, but he didn't respond immediately. Maya's heart sank. She'd miscalculated. It was too soon, or he didn't feel the same, or, "Pull over," she said suddenly. "What?" "Pull over. Please." He did, maneuvering to the curb. Before he could turn to her, Maya was already speaking, words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm sorry. That was too much. Too fast. You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know, needed to be brave enough to, Maya." He turned, and his eyes were shining. "Stop talking for a second." She did, holding her breath. "I love you too," he said simply. "I've loved you since Boston, since that first night when you told me about your dreams, and I knew I'd found someone extraordinary. I've loved you through 5 years of not knowing where you were, and I've loved you every day since you walked back into my life. I was just trying to find the right moment to tell you." Oh, it was all she could manage, relief and joy flooding through her. "Oh? That's all you've got?" He laughed, pulling her across the console and into his arms. "I just told you I've been in love with you for 5 years, and all I get is, oh?" She kissed him, pouring everything she felt into the contact. When they finally broke apart, she whispered against his lips, "I love you. Better." He kissed her again. Much better. 6 months after Maya had walked into Ethan's office and back into his life, everything felt both impossibly right and terrifyingly fragile. They'd found their rhythm, learning each other's quirks and boundaries. She'd discovered that Ethan was grumpy in the mornings until he had coffee, that he had a secret weakness for terrible reality TV, and that he could quote entire passages from his favorite novels. He'd learned that Maya needed absolute silence while editing, that she stress-baked when anxious, and that she had a terrible sense of direction but refused to admit it. The literary fiction imprint was succeeding beyond anyone's expectations. The first 3 books had been released to critical acclaim and respectable sales. Industry publications were calling it one of the most exciting new ventures in publishing. Maya was being courted by other houses, receiving offers that would have seemed impossible a year ago. But she had no intention of leaving. This was where she belonged. Then came the call that changed everything. Maya was in her office, deep in manuscript revisions, when her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. Hello? Is this Maya Williams? A woman's voice, professional but warm. Yes. Who's this? My name is Jennifer Ross. I'm a senior editor at Beacon Press. I'm calling because we're launching a new imprint, and we want you to run it. Maya's heart stopped. Beacon Press was one of the biggest publishers in the world, prestigious and powerful. I'm flattered, but I'm very happy where I am. I understand. But before you say no, I'd like you to hear what we're offering. The salary Jennifer quoted was nearly double what Maya was making. The benefits were exceptional. But more than that, it was the creative freedom, the budget, the chance to build something even bigger than what she'd started at Hartley Media. I need to think about it, Maya said, her mind spinning. Of course. Take a week. But Maya, opportunities like this don't come around often. After the call ended, Maya sat in stunned silence. This was everything she'd ever dreamed of, the kind of position that could define a career. But it would mean leaving Hartley Media, leaving Ethan. That evening, she told him. They were in his Kit Williams, cooking dinner together, when the words finally spilled out. Ethan went very still, the knife in his hand hovering over the cutting board. Say that again. Beacon Press offered me a job, running a new imprint. It's an incredible opportunity, Ethan. The kind that could. She trailed off, unsure how to finish. Change your career, he said quietly. Set you up for the future you've always wanted. Yes. He set down the knife, turning to face her. And you're considering it. I don't know. I wanted to tell you, to talk it through. But if you're asking if I'm flattered and intrigued, then yes, I am. The silence stretched between them, taut and uncomfortable. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice carefully neutral. You should take it. What? You should take the job, Maya. It's what you've always wanted. But what about us? What about, we'll figure it out. People manage long-distance relationships all the time. Maya's stomach dropped. Long distance? You're talking about long distance? The position is in Boston, Maya. I'm not asking you to give up your dreams for me. You gave up looking for me once because I ran, she said, anger suddenly flaring. Now you're just going to let me walk away again. That's not fair, his voice hardened. I'm trying to support you, to not be the selfish bastard who holds you back. By pushing me away? By making decisions about our relationship without actually talking to me about what we both want? What do you want me to say? He turned to face her fully, and she saw the pain in his eyes. That I'm terrified of losing you? That the thought of you being in another city makes me want to beg you to stay? Would that change anything? I don't know, she admitted, but I'd rather you be honest than noble. They stared at each other, the air between them crackling with tension and fear and all the things they weren't saying. Finally, Maya took a breath. I'm not taking the job. Ethan's eyes widened. Maya, you can't make that decision based on, I'm not. Or at least, not just based on you. She moved closer, taking his hands. I love what I'm building at Hartley Media. I love the team, the creative freedom, the authors we're championing. Yes, Beacon would be bigger, but bigger isn't always better. And most importantly, I'm not running away from something wonderful just because staying is scarier. Are you sure? Because Maya, I meant what I said. I don't want to hold you back. You're not holding me back. You're part of the life I'm choosing, the life I want to build. She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. 5 years ago, I ran because I was afraid. I'm not making that mistake again. This time, I'm choosing to stay. The kiss he gave her was desperate and relieved, his arms banding around her like he was afraid she might disappear. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he whispered. So damn much. I love you too. And Ethan? We need to promise each other something. Anything. If opportunities like this come up in the future, we talk about them. Really talk. With honesty. And without either of us playing the martyr. We figure it out together. He nodded. Together. Deal. A year and a half after Maya had walked back into Ethan's life, everything had changed, and yet nothing had. They'd moved in together, choosing a loft in Brooklyn that was halfway between the office and her favorite coffee shop. The space was filled with books, of course, stacked on every available surface, spilling from shelves, creating small towers on the floor. It drove Ethan crazy in the most endearing way, and Maya loved watching him try to organize them by some system that made sense only to him. The literary fiction imprint had become one of Hartley Media's most successful divisions. 2 of Maya's authors had won major awards, and several had hit bestseller lists. She was being invited to speak on panels, to judge prestigious competitions, to mentor emerging editors. Her career had blossomed in ways she'd never imagined. But on a cold February morning, sitting in their bathroom with 3 positive pregnancy tests lined up on the counter, Maya felt her carefully constructed world tilt on its axis. She wasn't ready for this. They'd never even discussed children, too focused on building their careers and relationship to think about the future in such concrete terms. How was she supposed to tell Ethan? What if he wasn't ready either? What if this was too much, too fast, despite everything they'd built? She heard the front door open, Ethan's voice calling out that he'd grabbed bagels. Maya took a steadying breath, gathered the tests, and went to face whatever came next. He was in the Kit Williams, setting out breakfast, when she appeared in the doorway. One look at her face and his smile faded. What's wrong? She held out the tests wordlessly. Ethan stared at them, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up at her, and she saw a flash of something that might have been fear, or might have been wonder, or might have been both. You're pregnant? His voice was carefully neutral. Yes. How do you feel about it? The question surprised her. She'd expected him to tell her how he felt, to either celebrate or panic. Instead, he was asking about her. I don't know, she admitted, terrified, overwhelmed. We never planned this. No, we didn't. He set down the tests gently, moving around the counter to stand in front of her. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's unexpected. What do you want? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Maya realized he was giving her the choice, making it clear that whatever she decided, he would support. The realization made her eyes burn. I want, she started, then stopped, really thinking about it. When I imagine the future, I see you. I see us. And now, I'm starting to see more. A family. But I'm scared, Ethan. My career is just taking off, and a baby would change everything. It would, he agreed. But maybe not in bad ways. Maybe in ways we can't even imagine yet. You think we can handle it? I think we've handled everything else that's been thrown at us. He pulled her close, his hand settling on her still flat stomach. I think you're the strongest, smartest, most capable woman I know. And if anyone can be an amazing mother while also being a brilliant editor, it's you. The tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. And you? How do you feel about becoming a father? Honestly. I'm terrified. He laughed, the sound slightly shaky. I have no idea what I'm doing. My own father wasn't exactly Father of the Year, but I know I love you. And I know I'll love this baby. And I think that's a pretty good place to start. They stood in their Kit Williams, holding each other, as the reality of what was coming settled over them. It wasn't how they'd planned it. But then again, nothing about their relationship had gone according to plan. The pregnancy was harder than Maya expected. Morning sickness hit with a vengeance, and there were days when the thought of looking at a manuscript made her nauseous. But Ethan was there, bringing her ginger tea and crackers, holding her hair back when she got sick, and never once making her feel like a burden. Work was its own challenge. Maya told her team early, not wanting to hide it, and most were supportive, but she could see the concern in some eyes, the unspoken question of whether she'd be able to maintain her edge while pregnant, whether becoming a mother would soften her editorial instincts. She proved them wrong by working harder than ever, determined to show that pregnancy didn't diminish her capabilities. She acquired 2 debut novels that would go on to become cultural phenomena. She negotiated a major deal that brought a celebrated international author to Hartley Media, and she did it all while growing a human being. Ethan watched it all with a mixture of awe and concern, sometimes having to physically remove her laptop to make her rest. "You're going to burn out," he said one evening, finding her working at 11 p.m. "I'm fine. Maya, you're not fine. You're exhausted. Our baby needs you healthy, and so do I." She looked up, seeing the worry in his eyes, and finally let herself feel the weight of her own fatigue. "I just want to prove I can do this." Prove to who? To everyone watching, waiting for me to fail. To everyone who thinks being a mother means I can't also be great at my job. He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You've already shown everyone what you're capable of. Now you need to show our child that it's okay to rest, okay to ask for help, okay to be human." The words broke through her defenses, and Maya found herself crying, all the stress and fear and exhaustion pouring out. Ethan held her, let her break down, and then helped her back up. That night, they made a new plan. Maya would take a full maternity leave, something she'd been reluctant to do. She would trust her team to handle things in her absence, would learn to delegate instead of controlling everything. And most importantly, she would let Ethan help carry the load. "We're in this together," he reminded her. "That's what together means." On a warm spring evening, in a hospital room filled with flowers and soft lighting, Maya held their daughter for the first time. She was perfect. Tiny and red-faced and squalling, but absolutely perfect. Ethan stood beside the bed, looking down at them both with an expression of such profound love that Maya's chest ached. "What should we name her?" he whispered. They'd discussed names, made lists, but nothing had felt quite right. Now, looking at their daughter, Maya knew. Hope. Her name is Hope. Ethan's eyes met hers, understanding passing between them, because she represents everything they'd almost lost, everything they'd been brave enough to reach for. Hope Williams Hartley. It's perfect. Returning to work after maternity leave was harder than Maya expected. Not because she didn't love Hope. She adored their daughter with a fierceness that sometimes terrified her, but because she'd forgotten what it felt like to be just Maya, not Hope's mom. The first day back, she stood in front of her office building, briefcase in one hand, breast pump bag in the other, and wondered if she'd made a mistake. But then she thought about the manuscripts waiting for her attention, the authors counting on her guidance, the stories that needed to be told. She was more than one thing. She could be a mother and an editor. She could be both. Her team welcomed her back with enthusiasm, and she dove into the work she'd missed. But there were adjustments, pumping brakes every few hours, conference calls cut short when daycare called, the constant mental calculation of whether she was giving enough to her work, enough to Hope, enough to Ethan, enough to herself. One evening, 3 months after her return, she broke down in Ethan's arms. "I feel like I'm failing at everything," she sobbed. "I'm not giving enough to work. I'm missing Hope's milestones, and we barely have time for each other anymore. I don't know how to do this." "Listen to me," Ethan said firmly, pulling back so she had to meet his eyes. "You're not failing. You're adjusting. There's a difference. You're still the brilliant editor who built an imprint from nothing. You're an incredible mother who loves our daughter fiercely. And you're my partner, the woman I love more than I thought possible. Give yourself grace, Maya. Give yourself time. But what if I can't balance it all? What if something has to give? Then we figure it out together. Maybe you cut back hours. Maybe I do. Maybe we hire more help at home. Maybe we just accept that some days will be messy and imperfect, and that's okay. His words reminded her of what she'd learned over the past 3 years. That love meant supporting each other through the hard times. That strength came from vulnerability. That together they could weather anything. They made changes. Maya adjusted her schedule, working from home 2 days a week. Ethan did the same. They hired a nanny to help with Hope during work hours and made a pact to have at least one date night per week, just the two of them, remembering what it felt like to be Maya and Ethan, not just Hope's parents. Slowly, they found a new rhythm. It wasn't perfect. There were still days when everything felt like too much, when Maya wanted to scream from the juggling act, when Ethan looked as exhausted as she felt. But there were also moments of pure joy. Hope's first laugh, her first word, which was, predictably, book. The pride in Maya's chest when her latest author won a National Book Award and thanked her in the acceptance speech. The quiet evenings when they'd curl up on the couch, Hope asleep between them, and marvel at the life they'd built. 5 years after Maya had walked into Ethan's office, they stood in that same space, but everything was different. The office had been redecorated, filled with photos of Hope and mementos from their life together. Ethan had just announced that he was stepping back from the CEO role, transitioning to chairman, while a new CEO took over day-to-day operations, and Maya had been offered the position of editorial director, overseeing all of Hartley Media's imprints. "Are you sure about this?" she asked him that evening, sitting in the office where their second chance had begun. About stepping back? Absolutely. He pulled her onto his lap, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I've spent 20 years building this company. It's time to let someone else take the helm while I focus on other things." Like what? Like being a better father than mine was. Like writing that novel I've always talked about but never had time for. And most of all, like spending more time with you. Maya's eyes burned with happy tears. "You're going to write a novel? Don't sound so surprised. You're the one who's always said everyone has a story." He kissed her softly. "Besides, I have the best editor in the business to whip it into shape." She laughed against his mouth. "Flattery will get you everywhere." Good to know. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled over Manhattan. So much had changed since that night in Boston, since that morning she'd run away. But some things remained constant. The way he looked at her, like she was his whole world. The way she felt safe in his arms, like she'd finally found home. The certainty that whatever challenges came next, they'd face them together. "Remember that night?" Ethan asked softly. "Which one?" "Boston. When I asked if you believed in fate." Maya tilted her head back, meeting his eyes. "I said I believed in choices. I remember. And now? Do you still believe that?" She thought about all the choices that had led them here. Her choice to run, his choice to hire her choice to stay, his choice to forgive. All the small choices and large ones that had woven together into the tapestry of their life. "I believe in both," she said finally. "I believe fate brought us together that night, put us in the same place at the same time. But I also believe we chose this. Every day we choose each other. We choose to work through the hard times. We choose to be brave instead of running. That's what makes this real. Not destiny, but choice." He kissed her again, longer this time, full of promise. "Best choice I ever made," he murmured. Second best, she corrected with a smile. The best was hiring you. She swatted his arm playfully. Hiring me? I thought you said I got the job on merit. You did. He grinned, that boyish smile she loved. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't hope, when I saw your resume, that maybe fate was giving us another chance. And here we are. Here we are. They sat together as night fully claimed the city. The office where everything had changed, now filled with the comfortable quiet of people who'd found their way home. Maya thought about the scared woman who'd run from a hotel room 5 years ago, convinced she wasn't enough. She wished she could go back and tell that woman what she knew now. That love wasn't about being perfect. It was about being brave. That the right person wouldn't make you feel small. They'd help you become more yourself. That running from fear only led to regret. But running toward love, even when it terrified you, led to everything worth having. Her phone buzzed. A photo from their nanny. Hope covered in spaghetti sauce, grinning at the camera. We should go home, Maya said, showing Ethan the picture. Our daughter is apparently redecorating the Kit Williams with marinara. He laughed, the sound rich and warm. Let's go. They gathered their things, turned off the lights, and walked out together, hand in hand. The office door closed behind them, but the story, their story, continued on. Because some stories don't end. They just keep getting better. 3 years later, on a crisp autumn evening, Maya stood in a bookstore in Brooklyn, surrounded by faces both familiar and new. Tonight was the launch party for the anthology she'd edited, a collection of stories from the authors she'd championed over the years. But more significantly, it was also the launch of Ethan's debut novel, a literary thriller that had already garnered advance praise and a significant deal. She watched him now, standing at the podium, reading from his book with the same confidence he brought to everything. But there was something different too, a vulnerability, a willingness to be seen that made her fall in love with him all over again. When he finished, the audience erupted in applause. He caught her eye across the room and smiled, that private smile that was just for her. During the Q&A, someone asked him about his dedication. The book was dedicated simply, "For Maya, who taught me that second chances are real." Ethan's eyes found hers again as he answered, "This book wouldn't exist without my wife, not just because she's a brilliant editor, though she is, but because she taught me what it means to be brave. 7 years ago, we had one perfect night, and she left. It hurt like hell. But looking back, I understand why. Sometimes we run from the things that scare us most, the good things, the real things." His voice softened. "But the universe, or fate, or dumb luck, gave us another chance. And this time, we both chose to stay. We chose to work through the fear, the complications, the messy reality of building a life together. And that choice has given me everything. A family, a partner, and the courage to finally write the book I've been carrying for 20 years. Maya's eyes blurred with tears as the audience applauded. She'd heard him talk about their story before, but it never failed to move her. After the event, they walked home through the Brooklyn streets, hope between them, her small hands clasped in theirs. At 8 years old, she was already showing signs of inheriting both their love of stories and their stubborn determination. "Mama, when's my book going to be published?" Hope asked, skipping along the sidewalk. "When you write one, baby. I am writing one. It's about a princess who saves herself and doesn't need a prince." Maya and Ethan exchanged amused looks over their daughter's head. "Sounds like a bestseller to me," Ethan said. "Just make sure your mama gets to edit it." Obviously. Hope rolled her eyes with the dramatic flair only an 8-year-old could muster. She's the best editor ever. "No arguments here," Ethan agreed, squeezing Maya's hand. At home, they tucked Hope into bed, reading her a chapter from her current favorite book. Then they retreated to their bedroom, exhausted, but content. "So," Ethan said, pulling Maya into his arms as they settled into bed, "how does it feel? Watching your authors succeed? Seeing the imprint you built flourishing?" "Amazing," Maya admitted. "But you know what feels even better?" "What?" "This." She gestured between them. "US. Everything we've built. I spent so many years chasing success, thinking that's what would make me happy. But it turns out, happiness isn't about achievements or accolades. It's about this. Coming home to you and hope. It's about having someone who knows all my flaws and loves me anyway. It's about building a life that's messy and chaotic, and absolutely perfect." Ethan kissed her softly. "You know, when you walked into my office 7 years ago, I was so angry. Angry that you'd left. Angry that I'd never stopped thinking about you. Angry that the universe was dangling a second chance in front of me that might blow up in my face. And now? Now I'm just grateful. Grateful that you came back. Grateful that we were both brave enough to try again. Grateful for every messy, complicated, beautiful moment." They lay in the dark, comfortable in the silence, in the warmth of each other. After a while, Maya spoke again. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't applied to Hartley Media? If we'd never found each other again?" "Sometimes," Ethan admitted, "but then I remember that I was already looking for you. Maybe not actively, but every woman I dated, I compared to you. Every relationship failed because none of them were you. So I think, somehow, we would have found each other again. Maybe not when we did, maybe not how we did, but eventually. Because some people are meant to find each other. You really believe that?" "I really do." He pulled her closer. "And I believe that what we have is rare. Not perfect, but real. Built on choice and work and forgiveness. That's worth more than any fairy tale." Maya smiled in the darkness. "When did you become such a romantic?" "I've always been a romantic. I just hid it well." They drifted off to sleep, wrapped around each other, as they had been for 7 years now. And in the morning, they'd wake up and do it all again. The work and the family and the messy, beautiful life they'd chosen. Because that was the thing about second chances. They weren't about getting it perfect the second time. They were about learning from the first mistake and choosing differently. About being brave enough to stay instead of run. About building something real instead of something easy. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, second chances led to everything. To love and family and careers that fulfilled you. To lazy Sunday mornings and chaotic weekday evenings. To inside jokes and shared glances. To the quiet certainty that you'd found your person, your home, your place in the world. Maya had run once, terrified of what she felt. But she'd come back. And in coming back, she'd found not just Ethan, but herself. The version of herself that was brave enough to risk her heart, strong enough to juggle career and family, wise enough to know that having it all didn't mean being perfect at everything. It meant choosing what mattered most and being present for it. 7 years after that perfect night in Boston, 5 years after walking into his office, 3 years after having hope, Maya Williams Hartley knew exactly what mattered most. It was sleeping beside her, trusting her with his heart. It was down the hall, dreaming of princess stories. It was in the life they'd built together, moment by moment, choice by choice. And she would never run from it again. On their 10th anniversary, Ethan surprised Maya with a trip back to Boston. They left Hope with Ethan's sister and drove up the coast, retracing the journey that had started everything. The hotel where they'd met was still there, though renovated and modernized. They checked into a room, not the same one, but close enough to feel significant. That evening, they sat at the same bar where they'd first spoken, ordering the same drinks. Whiskey neat for him, red wine for her. "Do you remember what you asked me that night?" Maya said, swirling her wine. "I asked you a lot of things. But yes, I remember the important one. Do you believe in fate?" She nodded. And I said I believed in choices. I remember being so impressed by that answer. Most people either say yes or no, but you saw the complexity in it. And now? 10 years later, what do you believe? Maya was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "I believe we were lucky," she said finally. "Lucky to find each other. Lucky to get a second chance. Lucky that we were both finally ready to choose brave over safe. But I also think we made our own luck. We worked for this. We chose each other every day, even on the hard days. Especially on the hard days." Ethan raised his glass. "To making our own luck. To making our own luck," she echoed, clinking her glass against his. They drank, and in the warm lighting of the bar, surrounded by the hum of other people's conversations, Maya felt a profound sense of peace. This was where it had started, with a question about fate and a night that had changed everything. And now, 10 years later, she knew the answer. Fate had brought them together. But love, real love, wasn't about destiny. It was about the 1,000 small choices that came after. The choice to forgive, the choice to trust, the choice to stay and fight and build something real. As they left the bar and walked back to their room, Ethan took her hand. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what? For coming back, for staying, for giving us a chance to get it right." She stopped, pulling him close. "Thank you for remembering, for not giving up on what we could be, for being patient while I learned how to be brave." They kissed in the hallway of that Boston hotel, and it felt like coming full circle. From that first night to this moment, from running to staying, from fear to love. The next morning, they drove back to New York, back to their daughter, and their work, and their beautifully complicated life. And Maya knew, with absolute certainty, that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Some stories begin with once upon a time. Theirs began with a stranger in a bar and a question about fate. But the best part? Their story was still being written, one choice at a time, one day at a time, one moment of brave over safe at a time. And it was perfect. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. Not because they never struggled, but because they struggled together. Not because fate demanded it, but because they chose it. Every single day, they chose each other, and that made all the difference. What did you think of their story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what's your rating? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories, and check out more emotional stories by clicking on the end screen.